In this lecture, I'm going to introduce the stitching tool. The stitch tool allows us to select two islands on the UV map and stitch them together. This stitching effect will help avoid abnormalities along the edges of our objects. So let's have a look at stitching in Blender. So I have a pre-made lesson here just so we can get right into what we're looking at. So what we have is a cube or box without its face, because I thought it would just be simpler to see without a face at the top. And we've got a checkerboard pattern. Now the thing is that we see around some of the edges of the checkerboard pattern is, if we go into edge select and select the edge, we can see that the edges are not lined up perfectly, and this shows us that there will be problems in terms of how the texture is applied at the seams. So we're going to use stitching to solve these issues. So we have another example here where the checkerboards don't line up at all very well, so there will be issues when the texture is applied. If we move to another area, we can see yet another example where the checkerboard is not applied correctly, therefore the textures will not be applied. To solve this issue and to make our texture run seamlessly across edges, we're going to use the stitch tool. Now to use the stitch tool, we can go to UVs and we can go to stitch, or we can press the V key. Make sure that you have the appropriate part of the mesh selected. So if we zoom in, we can see that we have this edge selected. Now it appears as two edges on our UV map because it is the same edge but for two different islands. So what we're going to do now is we're going to press the V key. So I'll press the V key once, and we can see, if we zoom in, that we have a green highlight applied. This green highlight shows us where our island will move to once we press the enter key, so that it can be shifted to the correct position for a good stitching effect. So I'm going to not worry about these options down here at the bottom for now. We don't need to worry about those. Let's just press enter and see what happens. So two things have happened, one on each panel. The first thing that happens is that the two selected edges on here have joined up to become one. Now we can still select these faces, and we could still actually select and move these faces. So they haven't merged together, they've just stitched together. So I'm going to press escape to cancel. And as a result of this stitching, if we look over here, we can see the checkerboard flows perfectly around our edge. So we can see all the way from top to bottom that flows perfectly around our edge. That means that when we apply our texture, we're not going to have any problems with this seam. So there we go. That's stitching in the UV editing panel in Blender.